each one of her lives coming to the same place. But it isn't death that he's after. Okay, I am going to leave this up for you to read while I go and grab some water. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Now let's just get this so I can see it right. Secure telegraph. This telegraph is subject to classification. Please see classification protocols for additional instructions. Incoming telex. Incoming. Incoming. XN 334.3 YKZ 66792 October 4512.2.968 Provisional Site XX2 MSG begins. Contact lost with Site 7. Assets of known interest to USSR present. Several persons on site subjected to be collaborators. Recovered documentation confirmed Research Director Gessler and SCP-1041 as compromised. 9 subjects with high weaponization potential are considered lost. Existence of Soviet December program has been verified. Contents of Site-7 presumed to be integral to December. Re-establish contact with Site-7. Deny anomalous assets to Soviet Union. Continue evacuation from Russian sphere of influence. Neutralize SCP-1049. Signature 052. Message ends. Oh. There's a prologue. Oh. It is a multi-part series, I see. Okay. Let me just get prepared. Alright. Let us do this. Prologue. 058 opened the door to the observation deck. Brightly lit by a clear morning sun, the observers on the 86th floor had a clear panorama of Manhattan, still buried in snow from the storm passing through the day before. A healthy crowd of men in business suits and women in fur coats are clustered along the concrete wall, peering down at the skyscrapers, posing for photographs. 058 scanned one wall, knelt his eyes against the sun as he spotted a white-bearded man in a long black coat standing by the southeastern corner, apart from the crowd. Looking up into the sky, he picked his way through the crowd, waving amongst tourists and businessmen. He took a place next to the man and tried to figure out what it was he was looking at. Whatever it was too close to the sun, the glare threatening to blind him. His view settled for a 058 settled for a view of the East River. The tiny barges below steadily moving up and down the blue line, winding between the endless expanse of the city blocks. Hold on, sorry, give me a moment. Need to do something. Where is it? Could have sworn. that should be good. Now, where was I? I'm pleased that you heeded my note. The old man kept looking upwards as he spoke, his deep voice tinged with a Moscow accent. You've picked a fine place to meet, in enemy territory. 058 solicited a cigarette out of his case. I had always envisioned this group as more of a committee, you know. 13 men with a common purpose. He lit his smoke as he continued to study the crawling anti-barges 80 stories below. The naivete of youth. 0513 idly scratched his head in thought. How are we going to survive if two and God knows who else is working against me? Two isn't working against you. He simply doesn't care what you think. 13 sighed. You've been waiting for something like this for a long time. A crowd seemed to be gathering at the other end of the observation deck's eastern wall. 8 turned to face the deck now, leaning his back against the concrete. Sending a mission to Soviet territory without my knowledge, activating assets, ordering the decommissioning of an anomaly. What else is it but a challenge? Oh, it's a challenge, replied 13, but not to you. Like you, 2 sees the world as organized into a series of clear, identifiable factions. And like you, he is wrong about that. 8 let out a stream of smoke past his lips. The world seems to be shaking itself into 2 very clear factions, if you ask me. The overseer laughed. You may be right, and it may very well be happening within this very council. That's an odd observation coming from you. You're clearly aware of the rumors about your loyalties. I am subdirector of Eastern Eurasia. Only a fool would think I had no ties. The crowd at the other end of the wall was murmuring. They glanced over briefly at the increasing commotion. Too many bodies were in the way to discern much of anything. The younger overseer frowned. I began to think it was a mistake to meet you here. 13 looked over at 8. This mindset will serve you well. The day may come where that it is true, but I assure you, it's not today. 8 shrugged. So what do you recommend? How do I call off the mission? The personnel are already in Poland. Call it off? No. You're sitting in a good position right now. If you meddle, you waste resources, stopping a Foundation initiative. And you conceded Site 7 to the Soviets. You diminish yourself to the rest of the Council. And I tip my hand, as well as yours. Hint of a smile crossed 13's lips. The best advice comes with a dose of self-interest. So I can't act against a mission that I don't authorize and don't like. How is that a good position? The old man turned his face back to the sky. 2 is gambling. He's ignoring factions that would usually make him hesitate because he sees an opportunity. It's blinding him, and the mission is likely to fail. A flash of light pinged 8's peripheral vision. He glanced over, light glaring from a gold wristwatch. He saw a single person above the fray, now at the other end of the wall. A silver-haired man in a gray suit, standing on top of the wall, facing the air. The noise had coalesced into various entrees not to jump. The man didn't seem to hear them. Sirens started to echo far below. As Abe was about to step away, he felt 13 gently hold him in place, his gloved hand on his arm. "Never mind that. It's been a long time coming," the old man says, casually waving the scene off. "Use your contacts to keep tabs on the mission. Be ready to pick up whatever pieces are left after that, and pull the snare that Tu has set for himself at the right moment." 30 feet away from them at the other end of the wall, a gasp went up from the crowd. 058 looked over again. The man was no longer atop of the wall. 13 turned up his collar against the cold. The hand on 8's arms now patted him on the back. Time to go. The two overseers walked back towards the elevator, passing unnoticed against the stream of onlookers rushing to see what they had missed, several in police uniforms. A dull roll of excited chatter and word already sparked between the assembled visitors, as salacious details, real or imagined, filtered away from the wall and out to the world. As the doors of the elevator closed on the two men, the car to themselves, 8 faced his colleague. Who was that anyway? 13 had removed his gloves, slender fingers laced together, cracking his knuckles. A piece with only one possible move left. The rest you'll read on the papers this evening. The air above the elevator's door steadily swept to the left. 17th floor, 16th floor. "I'm sure I will." 8 put his hat on. "I appreciate the information, 13, though I expect you're the one who should be thanking me, in due course. If you play it right, we'll both be pleased." The two men rode the rest of the way down in silence. The doors opened. A line of police had cordoned off section of the observation deck, and the two overseers passed through a mostly empty lobby on the way to the main entrance. Before heading back out into the world, they shook hands. "Adush? Udachi?" the old man said. "One believes that you're the man for this job. I'm inclined to agree." Auf Wiedersehen, the young man replied. He held the handshake for a moment longer. "If the time comes, 13, you'll need to push me yourself." 13 felt the younger man's grip tighten just a little. He smiled broadly. "I know, 8. I know." The overseers pushed out into Fifth Avenue, taking their leaves as they went in separate directions. Down the street, a man freshly arrived from the city's coroner's office read off the time as he looked at his watch. An assistant scribbling notes next to the crippled mass, hastily covered in a sheet. The red stains were beginning to bloom. Whew, boy. Yep. This is definitely going to be, quite political one. But, from what I'm reading, it's real good. And I do believe that there is going to be at least a little bit of action. Excuse me a moment before we do rest my voice. In the meantime, look at this amazing art. Yeah, man. Gotta love Maelstrom, man. Anyway, so yeah, this is going to be a 8-part series, 10-part series. Okay, 11-part for the prologue. So yeah, gonna be real nice. But anyway, on to part one. Matryoshka, part one. Do you have any children, Ekaterina? Katrina? SCP-1041, dressed in a loose gray-fitting, yeah, loose-fitting gray and black striped clothes, picked another file out of the cabinet and rifled through it. Her flashlight scanning quickly, assessing its relative importance against its weight and size. Experimentation in extraction of compound H13 white, trial series 7. Into the briefcase it went. She hurriedly moved on to the next shelf. No, that'd be a grave area. Error. Nechayeva's French was flawless. Her aptitude for language, one of the reasons for her initial assignment, she looked again at the clock mounted above the door, undoing and redoing the cuff of her thick woolen coat, while she waited for her companion to finish. She was ill at ease in civilian attire. 1041 paused briefly. A grave error. For her, or for everyone? The unspoken distinction was troubling. She continued to fill the briefcase with the most relative files available. The whole project would never fit in such a small case, but enough points of reference would allow Petrov's people to reconstruct it in time. I don't know if I have any children, I've claimed to be a mother sometimes, but there's never been any proof. I for I hope for my sake I am. I hope for anyone else's sake that I am not. It does not matter right now. I suppose you're right. It was easy to forget how young this woman was sometimes. It was almost full. The briefcase was almost full. She would only be able to fit the abstract of the paper detailing the final findings. The older woman slid the report out of the case and undid the clasp binding the papers together. Where will I be tomorrow, I wonder? I haven't had to think about that for quite some time. They shouldn't be here for another 18 hours. We've repositioned most of our people to Novosibirsk. Once I secure the exit route, you'll be coming with me out of here. 1041 paused as she considered the plan once more. Have you ever news of Dr. Geisler? The youngest woman's face hardened. Lines further around her mouth. It's better to think of him as dead. 1041's flashlight briefly shone on Nechayeva's steel teeth as she spoke. Despite herself, the older woman felt stabs of regret when she thought of the Foundation researcher Dr. Geisler. Had always been likely to come to a violent end, considering where he had come from and what he had begun. But they had all been part of it, willingly enabling both Soviet and Foundation scientists to make great leaps of understanding in the terrible new field they helped create. The woman had logged a total of 14 days and 18 hours of work on Dr. Geisler's project, yet she felt deeply responsible for its ultimate result, and for Geisler. The two women left the vial. No, okay. Oops. Skip a couple paragraphs right there. Right. Right now, though, she was right. She thought far better to think of the doctor as being dead. Other thoughts were intolerable at the moment. Nephrology had been born at Site 7. Their job now was to make sure it did not die here. Or worse. You have what's required, asked Netch. I'm just going to shorten her name to something I can actually say. Sorry. Nodding to the briefcase. 1041 paused, shoving the last of the documentation into the case and snapping it shut. I hope so. We have 15 minutes at most before the sentries check my block again. We have to hurry. The two women left the file room, entered a dark hallway. All personnel were focused on maintaining the perimeter and keeping those anomalies that were an immediate threat on lockdown. Even GRUP group didn't have the staff at present to post guards in the research wing. The Foundation operatives on Site 7 had fought dearly to keep control, surprised as they were. The new masters of Site 7 were still awaiting replacements from Moscow for the men they had lost in the operation. The older woman led the way to the service corridor at the back, where the boiler equipment was kept. In the years she had spent as a mandatory guest of the Foundation, security had never been relaxed. She didn't remember wishing to escape at any point, especially when Dr. Geisler had asked her to participate in his work. When the guard complaining at shift change about how damn drafty it was in the boiler room, that had seemed like something useful to remember at the time. Nechayeva's people at KGB, eager to strike back at the rivals within the Soviet government, had been able to make good use of that information. Quickly, they twisted their way along the service corridors, stream ducting and wiring snaking over their heads. The hum of the machinery that powered Site 7 growing increasingly louder as they ventured into the heart of the facility. Coming to what looked like a dead end behind the three large pipes, 1041 saw a plain access door next to where the pipes appeared to come through the wall. A thin sheet of frigid air seeping around the frame of the door, a small wind that sliced clearly through the bare warmth of her clothing, chilling her immediately despite the boiler room's oppressive heat. Netch produced what looked like a tiny screwdriver and several thin lengths of wire from an inner pocket of her coat. She crouched down level to the doorknob, inserted her tools, and levering delicately inside the lock. Within seconds, she heard a small metallic catch, and the door was open. In her mind, 1041 went back over the route they had taken, repeatedly, hoping she would not lose her way while rushing back to her cell before inspection. She had never had illusions about the Foundation, or what their capabilities were if they were threatened. But she had been told, group was a different matter. If she were found out, she would need to take the pills that Netch had given her, immediately, and hope that it would kill her quickly enough. Even with the fate that surely awaited her if she were captured alive, she wondered if she'd be able to do it. Netch touched her arm, looking back into the eyes. We haven't forgotten your service. The young KGB operative's face was stony. I'll be back here for you. We'll meet again. 1041 squeezed Netch's hand in reply, then handed the briefcase containing the work of years over to her. Please know, no matter who I am when you see me again, what I say, I'm grateful for what you have done. Netch nodded. She opened the access door. Cold air now buffeted them, propelled down the exterior service corridor by unknown forces. She drew her service pistol from under her coat, looked into the dimly lit path ahead. They nodded to each other, though Netch's permanent frown remained on her face. 1041 noticed that the younger woman's eyes were not as hard as the rest of her. They still provided a little insight. Their future was less certain than the young operative was presenting. Dosaftra, said Netch. She moved now into the corridor, disappearing into the winding pathways in just a few seconds. Briefcase in one hand, pistol in the other. The service door closed behind her. 1041 started running back down the boiler room. Matters were out of her hands now. End of part 1. Huh. And this image was for that chapter we just read. Very nice. Whew. Give me a second. Oh. Okay. Directly across from Stillwell sat Johannes in the green plastic chair. To his left was Pugan, of the threadbare grey couch. Stillwell shifted in his flimsy wooden folding chair. Its creaking echoes far too deeply for the small room in which they waited. Motes of dust hung unmoving, fixed in space, illuminated by a sickly shaft of thin light coming down from a skylight where a view of nothing. Gorgat. Shiver spoke. His head flexed, cracking his knuckles yet again. He looked to the mission's commanding officer. We really could have used guns for this. Stillwell frowned. That's not a good idea in this place. The symbolism isn't something we want rattling around here. It was hard enough to get the place into this condition. Jahaz smiled, a flash of teeth underneath his brushy black moustache. Amusing, and yet we stuff a killer, a traitor, and a thug in here. No second thoughts. There were plenty of second thoughts. Stillwell shook his head. No reason to add more risk when it's not needed. Three fellas packing heat in Krakow, Kro- can't say it right, restricted zone would cause enough problems anyway. I thought getting through the restriction zone was the whole point of this place. Never know when you might need to bail out. Banging on the door in the room's shadowed foyer started again, growing more intense and hurried than what they had first entered. "And what is that?" said Coogan. "Don't open the door," replied Stillwell. Spinell was barely able to get Spinella was barely able to get the wheelchair he was pushing off of the plaza and into an alcove before he slumped his decreasing weight against the wall, doubling over as the wet, rough coughing racked his body. By the time he was finished, his vision was blurred, tears forced from his eyes from the violent fit. His head throbbed. He looked at his handkerchief, studied the spots of blood that were there, more often than not now. The wheelchair's occupants, as ever, stared blankly forward. Even though the numerous layers of thick woolen clothing, it was easy to tell that the man at the chair was emaciated and little more than bones and withered skin. Wiry gray hair poked out from around his nightcap, the sunken and waxen cheeks impervious to the feelings of the cold. The rictus grin stuck on his face was not reflected at all in his blank, rheumy eyes. To the casual observer, the only indication that Spinell wasn't pushing a corpse around was the old man's constant, low cackling. It was apparently a reflex reaction of some sort, a brain defect. The knowledge never made Spindella's mood any better. Spinella wiped his mouth one more time in his handkerchief, then finished the leather case out of his coat pocket. He took out a couple of cigarettes, flicked them in the metal lighter, lit it, and drew. The smoke seared his lungs, while he felt a slow calmness settle back into his body. He reflected again on the mission. The Foundation's only neurologist sent to reconnoiter Site 7, now responsible for 2 weeks, uncovering a poorly understood anomalous humanoid into an area controlled by Soviet military police. They had told him that he was to get the hell out of there as soon as he could. That was the only part that made him even a little bit of sense to him. Spinella dragged deeply of the cigarette. The pain brought bright and terrible in his chest. This sort of ridiculous operation was a perfect emblem of today's state of affairs. Unsuitable operatives doing stupid things because there was no other choice. And the vocation from the Soviet territories wasn't even complete yet. The manner on how things were supposed to improve from here were well beyond his reckoning. He drew on the cigarette until the embers were close enough to burn his fingers. Then he cast the little stub into the gutter and exhaled a slow, lazy stream of blue smoke into the frigid night air. He was now ready to resume. Just another couple of kilometers, mindless cackling occupied Spinell's back into the plaza. Accompanied Spinella back into the plaza as he pushed the old man's wheelchair over onward. young team leader leaning forward in his chair and regarded Juhaz. "We never had the chance to debrief when you came back in," said. Yeah, said. Where is it? Stillwell. LaForce said you had calculated that you were better off here than there. But why? They've already seized 8 sites. You could have finished off this whole thing if you wanted. Killed us all. Juhaz leaned back inside. He studied the man before him. Curiosity is the prodigal operative's face. Remained Stillwell of a professor back in MIT. It was a close call. The Russians could still win. And in short order, your little plan in the States was quite successful, you know. Please don't call that a success. Stillwell's stomach clenched as the memory. His hand suddenly clammy. Oh, but it was marvelous. When Zedrev heard about what the Americans were doing, he looked like a gutted fish. You could have seen them all. You should have seen them. All of them. They thought Truman was coming to wipe them all out. But you scattered the ink so thoroughly, all we have instead in their precious nuclear stockpile. Stillwell swallowed back the excess saliva, took a couple breaths. So why return? If the Soviets have such an advantage, you're a smart man. Why choose a losing side? Juhaz frowned, clicked his tongue a few times. I saw what they're planning. The statement hung the hair between the 3 men like the moving dust motes. Knocking on the foyer door had now returned to heavy thumping, more forceful than before. It rattled the whole room. The vibrations reached into Stillwell's bones and imbued him with the sense that something was very, very angry. How do we know you're still not working for them? Johannes replied softly. The note of concern in his voice surprised Stillwell. Don't open the door. Where is it? Why do you not speak Russian? Why? He's supposed to be from Poland, you arrogant prick, thought Spinella. He forced out another line in fake broken English. I am not so good with the language, Tovarish. Please, let my father through to the institution. The checkpoint guard looked lean and hungry, like the war had ended yesterday. He looked down at the wheelchair occupant, the grim set in his jaw unwavering as he handed the forged Polish passport and identification back to Spinella. He looks to be dead soon regardless. You don't look so good yourself. It's just a small cough. Too bad. I brought 2 cartons of cigarettes here in my satchel. They'll go to waste. Spinella coyly touched the pack taken from his side. Oh well, we are just checking in. Won't be very long. I should say not, the lean soldier permitted himself a smile. Yuri, it is Yuri. Yeah, Shuda. Yuri, it is Shuda. He mentioned another guard to come over, indicating with a glance to Spinella's pack. The second guard, small-eyed and hulking, roughly upended the pack onto a nearby table, shuffling and packing through the contents where the lean Guard kept his eyes locked on Spinella, calmly drumming his fingers on the stock of the Kleshnikov slung over his shoulder. Yuri swiftly threw some of his pack for what felt like an eternity. The seconds passed like hours. He abruptly stopped his search, tapping his comrade on the arm. The two soldiers conferred over the contents of the pack now. Back to Spinella. Please just be the cigarettes. Just take the bribe and move on. Spinella's thoughts raced to what else they might have been looking at. What other suspicions might be raised? What's the meaning of this now? The first guard turned back to Spinella. The second guard was holding a bottle of duty-free vodka, plucked from the depths of the satchel. Spinella grimaced as he wheezed and exhausted of relief in his chest. The dance continued, just as planned. Something to keep me warm for my visit. Tovarishka, you know how things go. The lean soldier smiled once more, tugging the bottle into his coat as Yuri removed the cartons of smokes from the contents arranged on the table. We shall inspect these goods further. Lots of smuggles, that sort of thing, come through this crossing. You may take the rest of your belongings and proceed. The vise that had tied around Spinella's heart and stomach relaxed. It's grim. He tried not to let the relief that overtook him show on his face. Many thanks. We'll be on our way. He moved to push the wheelchair through the checkpoint when the old man started cackling, wheezing, low cackling, completely devoid of anything human that could have come from a faulty bellows of a distant air vent if Spinella weren't watching it come from the traveling companion. Their passage came to a halt. Yuri stopped them. What is so funny, old man? He stood darkly in front of the wheelchair, crouching down to be able to look into the man's lifeless eyes. Oh fuck. Please, he's a senile old man, you know. The old man continued to reflexively chuckle. Yuri's expression darkened. He looked now to Spinella accusingly. Why does he do that? It's reflexive. Please don't look at him. It upsets him. Yuri hurriedly tried to deflect. Jesus Christ, don't look him in the eyes. Traitor in our midst, the old man wheezed out. Treachery inside. He resumed the unseen, mirthless laughter. I can see it in me, oh yes. The two guards looked at each other. The lean guard brought his weapon around, trigger finger sweeping down over the safety lever in a fluid motion as he readied the rifle. Do you know what command put out this morning? They said to watch for anything unusual today at the checkpoints. He looked at Spinella. The smile was still there, but all traces of amusement were gone. You must agree, this situation is unusual. Yuri suddenly moved behind Spinella. The lean guard continued. What kind of matter are you bringing in here? What are you playing at? The Foundation neurosurgeon was dumbstruck. In all the time they had studied this creature, it had never spoken. But now, this thing had picked this moment for the first time to say something. The whole goddamn thing was about to come apart. There was only one option left now. He would die on its own terms. Spinella suddenly turned around and drove a fist into Yuri's groin, striking as hard as he could. The soldier cursed, wide-eyed with shock as he sank to his knees. Spinella tried to run forward with his wheelchair-bound abomination. As he started, his foot slipped on a patch of ice and it fell to the ground. Not even a chance to start running, he thought. Struggling anything to get up, his thoughts were interrupted by a blow to the back of his head that sent him to the ground. The lean guard stood over Spinella, barely visible through the blinding pane. The rifle now pointed at him. The old man's eyes remained blank the whole time. The stretched, translucent skin of his face pulled taut into its ever-present skeletal grin. Expression unchanged as his inexplicably spoke. They'll kill us all, every single one. The ragged chuckling resumed as the checkpoint gate closed. The three men were standing now, the door rattling in its hinges, somehow staying intact through the terrible force on the other side, slamming into it. Stillwell's teeth rattled every time whenever it was barreled into the increasingly unstable barrier. The room is shrinking, remarked Johannes. It was true. If Stillwell jumped, he would now touch the skylight. Something was very wrong. Coogan clutched his fist. How is that? The three men were knocked from their feet as another blow struck the door frame. The unknown force had knocked a hole through the middle of the door. Splinters of wood traveled through the air like mist, and naturally slow. Only darkness was visible to the other side. The room had slowly shrunk again. The ceiling was now just an inch or so over their heads. The key, said Stillwell. We need it now. Coogan hurriedly unbuttoned his coat and his shirt collar, looking down. It's not here. It's supposed to be here. It's supposed to be around your neck, shot back Johannes. How can it not be there? He has to put it there from the outside. I don't have it. What is he doing? The other two men looked at Stillwell. They were now hunched together, constricted by the bounds of the room. The chairs were pressing against him, and the walls touched his shoulder. They were face to face at the door. Stillwell buttoned his thick, long coat. Get ready. Johannes arched his eyebrows. For what? I don't know. Coogan began to pray. A blow of pulverizing force suddenly shattered the doors to pieces. The room was no more. Man, things aren't looking good for anybody. But, good part. That does it for part 2. Well, I can feel my voice is about to give out. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop this stream there. But man, I definitely will be continuing this next Sunday. And hopefully I'll get through the rest of Matryoshka. Starting with part 3. Also look at this good art. Thank you all for coming. And big ol' thank you to Airmail. Now, everyone have a good rest of the weekend and a good week.